Should we go ahead and start recording? So I'll just go over the agenda, if that's all right, just so folks know
Great.
what we accomplished today. So, welcome everyone. We are going to start with, do you have any announcements before we get started? Okay, great. We will be presenting our counter proposals for Article 6 and Article 25. And then initial proposals for 11, 24, and 26. And then we'll take a little break. And then HCU will bring counter proposals for 8 and 9 and initial proposals for 4 and 24. And we'll have lunch. And today, what time is lunch coming? Noon, perfect. And then if there's any counter proposals that we'll be presenting, we'll do that after lunch. And then we'll be planning for our next session, which will be at the North Terminal for that time for 9 to 3. That's our agenda for today. And we'll go ahead and get started. We want to start with Article 6.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right, does everybody have Article 6? Looks like it. Okay. I feel like we're getting pretty close on this one, so kind of cover the highlights and then where we still have a difference. In section A, we picked up your language. I think it was a good change now referring to this as an initial hire period. We had called it like a different probationary period, and that I think was maybe confusing. So we liked that, picked up that change to initial hire period. So that's the language in that first paragraph of A. So those changes carry through A1 and A2. In A3, we did accept your proposed change there that would allow people to start using vacation after 3 months of employment instead of 6. So that's a change as well. The one area that we did not pick up from your proposal where we have a difference still is the people not losing seniority if they come back within 2 years. We're still struggling with that one for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think to some degree, we feel like it devalues is not the right word, but the people who continue on employment with the district, it sort of puts them on equal footing with folks who leave and then come back. And we feel like that the people who stick around with the district actually deserve somewhat of kind of higher standing. And it also doesn't work with the way the district calculates seniority, because the district counts seniority based on a hire date, not based on total amount of time worked. So Carrie, your seniority is based on whatever date you first became employed. It's not, you have, 7 years, 2 months, and 4 days of seniority, right? And so if people came back after 2 years and we didn't hold it against their seniority, they get credit for the time that they weren't here, because their seniority date, it would remain that original hire date. And so in a sense, if they worked in Beaverton for 1.5 years, that would count towards their Hillsborough seniority. And so that is also a downside for us on that. So we've continued our current definition of seniority, which would have people, if you resign and then came back, your seniority would start over again. I believe that that's the only place. No, we didn't pick up number 4, additional hours within the same position and job site will be offered to employees in order of seniority prior to being posted or assigned. I'm thinking that is kind of an Article 8 topic, where we're talking, vacancies and postings and things like that. So, that one, we did not include here within this initial hire period of seniority. Did I miss anything on this one? Anything that you missed that? Anything more?
No, we would just get back to the staff that stays here. We feel like that, giving the seniority to people that leave and building their seniority. It's kind of like a service to the staff that stays here. But there's other ways that they can go on and leave, they can, other ways that if they need to stand out, that they can do that instead of coming back.
Questions on that one? Yeah.
I have a formatting question. It seems like our language was lost. Yeah, I thought on the formatting, it would stay in and then you would strike it out if it wasn't something you were gonna pick up.
We just only pick up the stuff that we're gonna keep. So you can kind of look at it side by side with like your
Yeah.
previous one.
The challenge that I found, the challenge is showing language that you proposed as new language that we didn't accept as struck through, is it's hard to differentiate between that and current language that we're proposing to delete. Because that's shown as a strike through. So when we do it that way, then sometimes I lose track of, is that language in the contract already? Or was it just proposed and we're not accepting it? So that gets tough to track.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
Can we change that on our agenda? Because I know that's something we've been following, because that's on our agenda formatting. So we can update our process too.
Because that's what we've been doing.
I see what
Yeah.
you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we're happy to do that, as long as we're all following the same process.
Yeah.
We can all.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah,
Brian,
thank you, Tim.
A2 is back to contract language with the acceptance of the initial hire.
Because, I thought we had agreed that we would keep the proposed language not accepted, italicize it and strike it through. What,
And that is the format that we followed the last time, so I changed the rules without telling anybody, I'm sorry. I will update that.
Yeah, thank you. Hannah is now reminding me that A2, we have a difference there as well. You had proposed to change it to employees in their initial hire period are not subject to just cause protections. We prefer to keep it as that the dismissal of those folks can't be grieved because the law now gives them just cause protection. So even if we say in the contract, they don't have it, they do. And if we take out the fact that it can't be grieved, now all of a sudden we could have somebody a week into employment filing a grievance and us going to arbitration. And we don't see that as appropriate. So that's why we've kept it as is. So thanks, Hannah. I totally overlooked that one. Yeah, David.
Yeah, so in current practice, when an employee receives an HR-approved 1-year leave of absence, how is that handled with respect to seniority? Is that year counted in the current practice
Yeah.
as part of the seniority?
Yeah, I mean, there's not, a break of service is not entered into the system, so that would still maintain that unbroken string of seniority.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
The only thing that happens in those situations is that they wouldn't receive a salary step increase
Yeah,
for that year of absence. But seniority remains
But
intact.
seniority remains intact,
Yeah.
inclusive of that year.
correct.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
correct.
How do you track that difference? How do you, and there's a way you have in your system of denoting the fact that you're not, the hire date isn't affecting their step.
Yeah, we do. We look at every single one of those. Anyone that has a leave, we pull that up and make sure how long were they on a leave? And will it affect their salary step?
And the reason I ask is because, we'll have to discuss this obviously, but, it's good to know how difficult it may be to track kind of step seniority versus hire date. Yeah, because I think our interest was in folks who leave, being able to come back without losing anything, not being able to come back having accrued more. if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And so understanding the challenge might be to preserve the time that they had already accrued on their seniority. Is the interest there, much more so than, you know, having, it makes sense that there'd be a logistical issue if you're tracking it via higher date.
Mhm.
But if you're already able to kind of track their advancement on the step scale, that kind of is the difference.
Well, I mean, for advancement on the step scale, you would just look and see how many days somebody worked in the year, right? And I don't know how hard it would be to transition over to a new way of describing seniority, describing it as total amount of time accumulated instead of a higher date. I don't know what the,
Yeah, and I think also just making sure that we remember that the salary schedule is not tied to tenure. Those are separate things.
yeah,
Somebody could come in with so much experience that they're starting halfway of the salary schedule, but it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
Yeah, those aren't always together.
That makes sense.
other questions on Article 6?
Some of the seniority also, comes along with when we do any bumping that people have to do.
How do you mean?
Like if somebody loses a position, they can go ahead and have a bumping right of somebody that's less than, so that would affect that too. And we change this in that way, we use seniority.
Which is independent from steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to do anything with seniority that changes where people currently like rank in their current seniority setup, right? That would tend to probably upset people if you're like, I thought I kind of was here and now I'm here. And I know you guys don't, you're not suggesting that.
Right, yeah. Thank you for that.
How often does bumping rights come into play?
Only when we would do a reduction in force, which has probably been some time since you guys have had to do that.
2018,
That our last income.
our last big one, yeah. Sometimes we have to do minimal seconds. Position specific.
All right.
Other questions for Article 6? We're on to Article 25.
All right, looks like those have made their way around. I'll walk through this. And I left my glasses in the other room, so I may miss some things because I'm struggling to read it. So if I overlook something, one of these folks will help chime in. I feel like this is another one where we've worked through a lot of proposed changes and we're kind of getting there, but just trying to refresh my memory, you know, where we're at as well. Paragraph A, we've gone back and forth there about how we let people know that they're in an essential position. And we had initially taken out that kind of yearly list and instead shifted it to the job description. And I think you guys liked the job description and posting, but you wanted to maintain the list. So we've reinstated that language. So we're still focusing on essential, you know, positions designated as essential positions instead of the individual. But I think we're getting pretty close in this top paragraph. Again, we put back in the list by September 30th each year. We also kept the language that that would give people that information during the initial hire process. So you had proposed, in the event the district would like to amend the list of essential employees after October 5th, that those amendments shall be determined by mutual agreement. We feel like that needs to be a decision that the district can make. It should clearly come with notice to the union, but it seems like an operational thing that the district needs to be able to make that decision. But we've had that language there that there'll be notification during labor management. Again, clear communication is a benefit to all of us, so we like that piece. The language there in the second paragraph of A, I believe, is the same in our two proposals. Moving on to B, B1 is the same. B2 is the same. And if I'm misstating any of these, please speak up. I think 2A is the same. 2B is different. We don't have the date. You had communicated to employees no later than March 1st. I think we talked last time about we do get weather events after March 1st. We had one this year. Seems like I'm still expecting one, even though we're halfway, maybe now we're out of the woods, right? We shouldn't have at least a snow event. We could have some other form of weather, I guess. So anyway, it makes us nervous to put a date in there, just because it's hard to say what that date certain would be. So we, I guess another way to go out about it would be to make sure people had X amount of time or X number of days notice before a makeup day so that they weren't taken by surprise. So that'd be a possibility as well, but we just left it as makeup day shall be scheduled and communicated to employees.
I believe in our last proposal, we were striking, the last line as well. And-
Oh, did you?
And the line before it. We certainly don't mind, you making it clear that you will communicate to employees. But we kind of assumed that you would too.
Okay, great.
That's fine.
Thank you for that. Should be there on that. To C. What's that? 2D, thanks. 2D, we still have, and I don't remember when we had this discussion when you presented last time. I don't remember what was talked about. We had the language in there that their minimum of 4 hours unless they leave their work site prior to the completion of 4 hours. And I guess, Ray, I'd invite you to chime in here, but that is something that has been an occurrence or a little bit of a frustration where folks show up and then leave very shortly after showing up, because they're worried about being able to get home. And certainly if that's the case, they need to be able to go. But we don't think that they should be paid for 4 hours in that case, where they're making the decision to leave. And it sounds like it's happened enough that it's at least on our radar, or something that we have some concern about. Is that correct?
At least with essential. You're there for the student. I can recall the last big one that we work. And there was like a 2 o'clock storm coming in, a lot of people want to leave early.
And again, if people need to leave for safety reasons, they should leave. We're not saying that they have to stay. It just feels like it's kind of incongruent with the whole idea here that we've called you in, and since we've done that, we should pay you for 4 hours, So we've maintained that language in D. In number 3, B3, we moved that language. I think we were going back and forth. Where does that language live? It started out as public health emergency related language. And then we've picked up the majority of your language, except within 48 hours of the closure announcement. I mean, it is conceivable that we could have, we're talking in number 3 about the most significant disruptive events that we possibly have, right? An earthquake or something like that. So it is possible that we're not able to have that communication within 48 hours. I'm assuming if things were so bad that that was the case, you guys would probably waive that 48 hour because you wouldn't be able to meet within 48 hours either. But we agree again, meeting with the union to address safety concerns, but they have left a specific timeline out of there.
Before we move on, can you address 2C?
To see.
There's some language missing from our proposal to yours. So we had put for 2C, we have the same language you have, but then we had also added such absence will not subject the employee to disciplinary action. I don't talk about the removal of that.
Yeah, I don't recall our team's conversation on that. It may be that that was a piece that I overlooked when we reviewed this with the team. Do you remember anything on that? Let's talk about that in caucus because I'm not remembering that we made a conscious decision to leave that language out or that we had a specific concern with it.
Okay.
I mean, I think generally speaking, I agree with the premise that, and the whole idea of 2C is that, you're not able to get there, that you don't have to show up. It wouldn't make sense to then discipline people for not showing up in those situations.
Okay.
So let me talk about that one with the group, but thank you for bringing that one.
Yeah, and I'd also like to, I have some more questions about D and about race examples for D. I know
Okay.
we had a little bit of discussion the last time we met about how widespread this was. And the conversation was kind of like, you guys were gonna talk more about it and about how widespread it was.
Mhm.
And Ray, the example that I just heard you gave was, okay, we're at work, there's a storm coming in the afternoon and people are saying, okay, I wanna leave. To me, if I'm at work and there's a storm coming in, I'm unsure of how bad that storm is gonna be. That seems like a really valid time to go, I wanna go home. I'm not sure how safe it's gonna be, how safe the roads are gonna be. I mean, that feels like a very valid, and my employer may or may not be saying you can go home, but like, I know where I live. I know where my kids are. I need to go. And so, you know, we kind of left that conversation with your team was gonna have some more discussion and provide some more feedback. And I don't know that if that was the full conversation that we were gonna have about it. I feel like I still have some questions about whether this is an abuse of this language or this is really, because what I just heard sounded to me like a very valid, like, I'm concerned and I need to go.
Yeah.
My employer's asking me to be here, but I gotta make a decision for my safety and I need to go. I do see how there could be a potential for abuse with this language. But I don't feel like that has been clearly brought here if that's the case. So if that is the case, I'd invite you to maybe bring some examples that are more clear so we can have that conversation. Because I'd really like to have that conversation and see if we can strengthen the language so we're protecting the worker's safety, but also preventing abuse from happening, because it's not our intention that we're creating a loophole for workers to abuse either.
Yeah, and I guess I want to be clear on a couple of points that we totally agree on. If people need to leave because they have a concern for safety, they should go, and there's not going to be repercussions. There's not going to be discipline, which we just talked about. So the idea is not people shouldn't have the right to go if they have a concern about that. There we are in complete agreement. In our example, you would have gotten called in as an essential employee and maybe you were there for a half an hour and you decide I need to go, then you should go. But should you get paid for 4 hours time when you've made the decision that I need to go? That's the only question here. And it might not even be abuse. It might be very legitimate that I've decided I need to leave because I don't know if I can make it up my hill if it starts snowing more, you know? I live in one of those places. So it's not even that it's like a misdeed on their part. It's just, should the district be obligated to 4 hours pay when the employee is the one who, because I take the overall meaning of D is like, hey, if we drag you out in the bad weather and we only need you for an hour, we're gonna pay you for 4 hours because we put you to a big inconvenience, right?
Right,
And we agree with that concept, but when it's you that's decided I need to leave after an hour, not the district saying, I only needed you for an hour, now go home. We feel like that's when the 4 hour pay thing should not be an obligation. So it's not about wanting people to be unsafe, and it's not even about people having a scheme, like, I know I'm gonna show up for 15 minutes and then leave and I'll get my 4 hours. Yeah, I don't know that we're even alleging that that's like the motive. It's more, when should the district be on the hook for the full 4 hours? And for us, if you need to leave and you make that decision, obviously you get paid for all the time that you were there, time and a half, but we feel like we are off the clock at that point. So I just want to be clear on those pieces because we don't want people to be unsafe. Ray, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
I see it exactly.
Okay. Anything, any more discussion you want to have on that one, or?
no, thank you for that, I think we'll talk about
Okay.
it more as a team.
I don't know how widespread it is. I mean, I guess probably a lot of times it's like you bring concerns to us and it's like, this doesn't happen every day. It doesn't happen even every month, but it's happened enough to sort of percolate up to our attention, and again, I think that probably happens with you guys where, yeah, it happens enough that we want to bring it up. We've both been proposing to delete C and D in their current forms. Again, I think we've done a lot of good work. I appreciate the proposals you guys have brought to sort of simplify this and collapse it down so it wasn't so convoluted. Delayed start early dismissal. We didn't pick up a change of yours in C3 that I actually think is probably a good change.
Not canceling the district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything
So-
else is.
I like that change.
Yeah.
We can go with that one. Oh, sorry, Tiffany.
So on that idea, I would like to propose something for the formatting. It kind of seems from my perspective that we work really hard on those language, those little nitpicky, like, don't cancel the district itself. And they just seem to be disappearing. I'm wondering if there's a way we can change the formatting so that when you delete something that we've proposed to you, that, I mean, if you want to put brackets around it or stars or something, it just seems like, it keeps happening over and over again that we've worked on language, we propose it to you, then it gets lost. And then you don't necessarily even disagree with it. Like, you agreed with us that employees who need to go home for safety reasons would not be subject to discipline, but it just kind of disappeared from B to C.
Yeah,
So my proposal would be, let's come up with some kind of formatting solution where we can delineate that it's something that we proposed that you've rejected, so that it just doesn't keep getting lost, because it kind of starts to feel like we're spinning our wheels over here.
yeah, I think the challenge with this article was there was a lot of deletions and a lot of new stuff and a lot of moving around. I'll be really transparent with you that one thing that's difficult about showing what you guys proposed and then showing it with a strike through is we always work off of our last draft of the document, so we don't inadvertently agree to something that we overlook. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. We don't want to forget to put a strike through something and then be, telling you we agree with it and then realize that and say, whoops, we meant that to have a strike through, right? So we always work off of our draft. So if we were going to always be incorporating things you proposed, but we didn't accept it, it would be, we'd almost have to work off your draft of that document. I guess we wouldn't have to, but again, I still have the challenge of tracking, is that current language that we're proposing to delete, or is that your proposal that we're not accepting? So we could have another method of designating that, like italics and struck, or in some places, putting it in a different color. It just gets hard to manage it, that's all. I mean, we can talk about it. Let's talk about it maybe in a caucus or sidebar or something like that. I mean, I guarantee you, we try and be as careful as we can walking through here to include things. I think we're human. We, overlook things sometimes, and that just happens, and, a good example of this one is canceled versus closed. We agree with that proposal. Just got lost in the wash a little bit,
Seems
So-
like it might be a good sidebar topic.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's talk about it during the break.
Thank you.
But in this particular instance, in C3, we do agree with closed, instead of canceled. That's a good change. The last sentence of C3, we're in agreement on. I think the rest of it, the only other change was the strike of, that very last paragraph, which we both agreed to because we're moving it up to earlier in the article. I think we had previously been proposing to continue it, in that location. Other questions besides formatting?
Well, that's,
I'm just kidding.
You're good.
I do remember a lot of back and forth about formatting in our last bargaining,
Oh, gosh, yes, yeah,
and
It's difficult.
it's a beast every time.
it is.
It's just a lot.
Where
So-
it really changed was when we went to virtual bargaining during the pandemic. It got a lot more convoluted, so.
Yeah, I think it's different when we're in person too, and I think too, like trying to honor, the things that you brought forward and please know that our intention is not to cause impact on that and cause more distress. And that's why, for me, I have to look at things side by side, because even though I'm like, oh yeah, we accepted that, I'm trying to highlight, put a little note to myself, sometimes things get missed, and I apologize that if that has caused any confusion and we're not wanting to do that, we want to keep it streamlined for everyone.
Yeah.
I think the part two is as we go initial proposal, counter proposal, counter proposal, counter proposal, it can get kind of convoluted too, as we go back and forth.
Yeah.
On those things. I think just trying to go back to what we presented is also, like in an effort to support Hannah and the work that she's trying to do and keep track of.
That's what I was gonna say, it works for round 1 and 2, and then it becomes really messy. We made the decision to do it this way because it matches how licensed does theirs, and we've got a lot of people on both teams. And so then it helps them have the same format for both sides, but open to some ideas on that.
For sure. And I usually try and cover that by talking about the things that you guys have proposed that we didn't pick up in our proposal. So even if the words are not there, I'm at least acknowledging I just missed that one on you won't be disciplined if you don't show up. So again, I'm gonna blame it on not having glasses, but that wasn't the reason, because it happened when we were drafting this proposal. Okay,
David.
oh, sorry, David.
yeah, I wouldn't have thought of this until this last week. I was in some conversations and on B2D. Employees called into work during an emergency closure shall be paid in time and a half for all hours worked. What if the closure happens on a Friday, they've already exceeded 40 hours by Thursday night, so they're already in time and a half.
I would, if it is pure overtime, I'm just gonna talk without talking to my team. I think they would be at their time and a half rate and then time and a half.
Say that a different way, and then maybe I'll understand what you just said.
You make $20 an hour,
Okay,
but you're at time and a half, so you would be making $30 an hour. But now you're into overtime. So my assumption, you would be getting paid.
$45.
Thank you. I didn't want to have to do the math.
I'm happy to.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's time and a half twice. Yeah. I mean,
I don't know how, it could conceivably happen, or maybe you get dragged in on a Saturday, I suppose.
when it's even more likely, almost
That you're
certainly
into- that
to
you're
be
into
in
overtime.
time and a half, and it would be time and a half, and
Yeah,
how that would play out,
yeah,
that it might be worth some conversation to, whether it was time and a half, or I conceivably straight double time, not time and a half, time and a half.
Time and a half. I mean, my sense of it is that the time and a half for this is a premium for having to come in
Right,
when it's bad conditions. So
correct.
it's not a premium that's being paid because you're working more than 40 hours in the week, right?
Correct.
So we have to figure out how those things layer on each other.
Yeah, this might not require language in the contract, but a shared understanding, if you guys want to talk about that.
Yeah,
We can bring that subject up again.
Yeah,
we'll come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
of course.
Thanks for complicating things, David.
Oh, you're welcome.
I prefer to wait when it's actually all happening and then we're trying to figure out on the fly. No, just kidding. I would rather figure it out now than in live time. So, yeah, thanks for we'll talk about that, but again, the premium in this case is not related to you've gone over 40 hours a week. So to me, that would mean that premium applies as well. You know what I mean? You're getting a premium for being into overtime. You're getting a premium for being there in adverse weather conditions.
Right, and that makes sense, just as long as I think we're all on the same page together and can communicate to our employees what that looks like if it happens.
Agreed. Okay, that's the last of our counter proposals. We have a handful of initial proposals for you. Oh, we're on time, yes.
Yeah. Okay, you do it.
Please do, Brad. How are you comfortable talking about this one? Awesome, thank you. Give me a rest. All right, not a lot of change to Article 11. This is usually not a very controversial article, payroll deductions, but I'm gonna turn it over to Michelle.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. We just have one small change. I believe when this language was originally developed, that we didn't have access to online banking. Folks didn't have the ability to route funds as easy as they do now. And so one of the things that's kind of dated in here is the deduction that's a contribution to the United Way Fund. People can easily go to the United Way website and directly donate. They can do it on a recurring basis. They can do it on a one-time basis. They get an email with their donation receipt. So just getting payroll out of the middle of that transaction. We currently have 2 classified staff members who are still contributing to United Way. We would grandfather them in, we would shut them off by any means, but we would like to have that in the contract so that we're not like brokering for people.
Also, I mean, there are a number of things that people contribute to. I'm not sure why United Way is specifically called out here. I mean, and not that it's not a worthwhile organization, just a curiosity. It's probably been in the contract for a lot of contracts, is my guess. The only other change, felt like we didn't need that date, effective July 1, 2022 date anymore. It feels like it's outdated now. That's it on Article 11.
Is there a financial benefit to members for contributing to the United Way Fund through payroll?
No,
There's no
post-tax, so it's not like a section 25 benefit. Tax. It's just the same as them giving it directly.
It's probably a tax deduction, but it would be regardless of how they made that contribution, whether it came direct deposit or, writing a check or whatever. People still write checks.
And I don't know how they were getting received for their donation before, certainly their own department didn't do it, so there must be a connection directly anyway with United Way, so that, like Brian showed, people that have a tax deduction.
Thanks, Michelle.
Anyone else have any questions?
All right, we have Article 24 for you. Okay. We have one proposed change in Article 24. I seem to remember that you guys have a proposal on Article 24 as well. Yeah, so these are gonna kind of cross, and so we'll manage that. The one change we have in A5 is related to a change in that statute. So we have a reference there that if an employee is dismissed or demoted, they can elect to have a hearing before the school board under that particular statute. And then references that 15 calendar days notice, et cetera. That statute changed. So that's no longer inaccurate. No longer, that A5 is no longer accurate. The specifically the statutory component that gave people the right to a board hearing was eliminated from the statute. So now people would you would simply file a grievance asserting a lack of just cause, and it would work its way through immediate supervisor, superintendent or designee, and then could move on to arbitration. So it doesn't withdraw that as a right. It just eliminates the reference to a statutory board hearing, which is now no longer present in the statute.
So they no longer have a right to a board.
Under that law, no. So that's the only change we've proposed in Article 24. Otherwise, it's proposed as written. But again, I understand that you guys have an initial proposal on that one as well.
Anyone write enough?
I would also point out that it's structured a little strangely. I've never really noticed this in A5, which has a board hearing. And then if the board upholds the dismissal, then you would begin at step 3 of the grievance process, which is the superintendent. So that's a little bit an odd sequence of events. We're going to the board and the board says, yes, we uphold the board hearing. Now I'm going to file my grievance with the superintendent. In our hierarchy feels like a step back. So I don't understand that. I mean, I think I know that I've been involved in bargaining and that language has always been there. I just noticed that it feels odd. Okay, we've got one more for you. Article 26. Oh, thank you.
You okay with all right? Just a little.
Nice. All right. Probably not the most significant of the changes that we talked about during bargaining, but it is kind of housekeeping or keeping things in order for us. We'll let Michelle talk about this one under mileage. It's her department.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So, one of the things that's in policy for staff reimbursement is to have documentation of that submitted to the business office within 30 days. And when that doesn't happen, then there's no reimbursement. So I think this just clarifies for people, okay, for my last day of travel, I need to get this to the business, approved by my supervisor and to the business office, so reimbursement. It's also timely for the employee as well. What we can't have is that people like wait till the end of the year to turn in a year's worth of reimbursements and they're only eligible for 30 days back. So we're also adding this around the same things in license contract, just to make sure that it's clear to everyone there. We do communicate that at the beginning of every school year through our trainings that we have. Yeah, I know, the training, yes. So I think it's just being consistent with that, with that.
And so just to clarify that district policy for 30 days, that's pertains to all employees of the district.
All employees.
Not seeing it.
Well, I am thankful to not surprised anyone. Thank you.
All right, that's what we have brought for you today. We are a little bit ahead of schedule. We want to go ahead and take a break now, or what do you want to do?
Great, sounds great.
Okay. It always sounds great. All right, how long, what do you guys think?
Actually, I think we could use a little bit of caucus time.
Okay,
So could we feel like 30 minutes would be sufficient?
We can be in 10:30.
Yeah, that sounds good.
11,
Good.
10:30,
Yeah.
10:30.
okay,
Right back on schedule.
Okay.
all right, thanks, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, wonderful, thank you.
I might have extras. I'm always worried about running them, so.
All good. We'll say, oh, I'll put it with John too. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we wanted to start with 9. I feel like we're so close, like really close. Maybe we can finish this one today. In fact, I think we are 99.9% of the way there. The only thing that we have here is for our 14 plus hour shift workers. We didn't have a robust discussion about the 2 meal breaks at the table. We had initially, in our proposal, talked about the difficulty for our workers of taking that second unpaid break, both for the workers and really for the district by the nature of the work that we're doing when we, for employees who work more than 14 hours, the type of work that they're doing. And then in our, your last return proposal, I don't know if we really had a robust conversation about why that working break was removed. So we re-proposed it just so that we could have more of a conversation about why that was removed, and hopefully we can settle this one today.
I think I don't understand enough about exactly how it would work. I'm having a mental block for some reason on what it looks like. So maybe if we just kind of walk through. So we're talking unpaid meal periods, right?
Yes.
Well, under this proposal, to be clear, one is unpaid and one is paid and working.
Yeah,
Which means it could be interrupted, or it could be, you're watching surveillance screens, while you're eating, for the second one.
yeah. So that was, I guess that was one of the things I'm trying to process. So in a 14-hour shift, would that mean I'm in paid status for 13 and a half hours instead of 13 hours?
I believe that's right.
Yeah, it's right now the breaks,
Yeah,
meal breaks.
yeah, and that's part of the reason that we have an interest in this. We do think that it should make operations easier for the district, but also, for folks who are working that kind of a long shift, if they need to make their hours in some way, that they definitely don't want to work 14 and a half hours.
Uh-huh.
Does that make sense? Because of another second unpaid break.
Can I clarify? The 14 hours would actually be 15 hours if it was the 2 breaks, correct?
Yes. Because, yeah, 2 periods, yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
30-minute, okay.
And we want to keep it to 14 hours a half.
Well, I mean, the nature of the work, I mean, the workers who are doing this kind of long shift work, are usually working alone. It's very specialized work. And so they don't have somebody who's gonna relieve them of their work necessarily. And it might not be of a specific duration, so it could be a 14 specific hour shift, it could be up to 18 as it's listed on here, so. It's kind of variable based on the worker, but it was both to alleviate that like unnecessary, like I'm gonna have to stay an extra half hour on my shift unnecessarily because I had to sit for 30 minutes and now it's, 5:30 in the morning and I'm staying an extra half hour and I just need to go home and rest. And it's also because there's oftentimes not somebody to cover this work. And so it is functionally extremely difficult to take an uninterrupted 30-minute break from work.
We do think that's an undue burden for the district, for you to provide it under the law. You can kind of get a little bit of relief that way. And for our employees who work that long, certainly, I think it makes sense, for both parties, frankly.
And functionally, I think this is what is happening for these workers. I think it's kind of what is already happening. So we'd like it to be codified in our contract.
Yeah, and we don't want you to be out of compliance with the law and the contract if they're the exact same, because, we would rather codify the good practice that's happening.
So it would create a total duration of 14 and a half hours, 14 of which would be in paid status. Is that true?
Yes.
I did not bring my laptop with me, but under the table in BOLI, there is a star that says if it would cause undue operational effects to the employer, that's where this could be adjusted. So we were just trying to bring this in compliance with that statement, knowing that folks like TJ don't want to stay longer and there's not an extra like 30-minute TJ. So that seemed to be that operational like glitch.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I think I haven't been processing exactly what this looks like very well, so I think this conversation helps. It's a very small number of employees who end up on that shift. Do you end up on that shift?
Sometimes, occasionally, yeah, I mean, it
Yeah.
would depend on the length of the board meeting and it's.
Yeah.
All our essential responders.
Yeah.
We have on call. They do that also. Yeah, that actually got one incident where we had a storm, like HVAC issues and one of the days, not all night long. And we let go on sleep during the shift. And also floods, we had a building flood. We had folks on site all night long, pumping water, pump trucks. So those are all real scenarios that it has happened. Okay. You can have little things such as just a fire watch. Fire watch, have anybody there, then myself and my coworker might end up being 2 hours late a week for someone to get there to take the reports. At least
the building's occupied, we do a fire watch every 15 minutes.
Can I ask another question? It's one, uninterrupted and one working. Is there, a way to identify, so everybody gets the first one interrupted, or how's that? How do you envision that? Is it gonna be like a daily basis that they're gonna go, for, no, today my first lunch will be interrupted, and the next day, oh, no, today is my second lunch needs interrupted.
I think it's a good question.
Great question.
Yeah, I don't know if we've considered that fully. However, as is the case for most of these numbers, right? The most of the breaks is that it's scheduled with the supervisor.
It seemed to make sense that the first break probably wouldn't be interrupted, because that may be the way the schedule is. I don't know, that's what I'm kind of thinking. And then the second one would probably be one that could be the working.
Depending on when your shift starts,
Right.
yeah,
So I
if your
I-
shift starts in the evening.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that does seem to make sense, but maybe there are situations where someone and their supervisor decide to do the other thing.
Yeah.
Does that make more sense?
Yeah. I just think when we put this language in here, we have to think about all of the components that are connected to the individuals that do the work, go into those 14 hours or 14 hours plus. We want to make sure that, I just want to think through what that might look like, because
Yeah.
if it doesn't fit for everyone within that category, that falls into that category, and there's some situations that are kind of outside of that, just how we can manage those situations and what that look like. So just want to think through that.
yeah.
Yeah.
The vast majority of workers who will be impacted by this will be our facilities team. These are specialized workers who have specific skill sets with no other employees to back them up on that skill set. So our facilities staff are going to be most impacted by this, because the long hours that they work for emergencies or as a normal part of the function of their work. So that would be, if those are the questions that we need to be asking, that, that those would be the stuff that I would be asking the questions of primarily.
I mean, in a way, it basically just says that for people on that length of a shift, section F is always going to apply, right? Because section F already says if circumstances beyond our control, et cetera, we can't give you a meal break, then we're gonna pay you for your meal break. Right? So we would just be codifying that same concept on a kind of anytime somebody goes over or gets to a 14-hour, right?
Yeah, though F is written kind of specifically with the more normal circumstances in mind where a break had to move around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think effectively that is correct. It's worth noting that in our original proposal, there's no change really on this piece, other than in our original proposal, we did call it one paid and one unpaid. We changed that language just because we thought it might help clarify, frame the conversation. Though I don't think we're attached to any direction you want to go with the language in the grid, just the intention there.
Okay.
That clear.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, the rest of it, we're in agreement, right? Other questions? Thank you.
How dare you?
I know,
Kira has made a format.
I've
here.
made a formatting
Oh, my
error.
goodness. We're-
Not so.
Wow. So I'll clear it up with, as I speak about it though. Let me pull up all of our previous. Maybe it was just one little error. Okay. All right, does everybody have a copy? Okay. So for Article 8. Just a few changes here, a few proposals here. Starting in A, our first proposal is to lengthen the time for the bargaining of new positions, just for the placement on the salary schedule. And we've lengthened it from 14 calendar days to 15 district business days, so essentially from 2 weeks to 3 weeks. And the reason we are proposing this change is just recognizing that for the professionals working on the union side of these jobs, they're also working full-time jobs in the schools. And so oftentimes there's potentially information requests or background work that we need to do to make sure that we're doing our due diligence with the salary placement and representing our members here. So just having that little extra, that 1 week of time, we felt like was a reasonable ask of time on our end to go through that process for the salary placement. And B, we really heard your proposal about the 3 workday turnaround. And this was my mistake, my formatting mistake. Our intention here was to accept your proposal of the 3 days, so I should have italicized it here. We had a lot of discussion about that on our team, and we agreed we don't want to lose qualified, amazing bilingual candidates to other districts. And so we would like to accept your proposal there. I think our main concern as a team, as classified employees, which we did discuss some last time that we met, was internal employees losing out on potential job opportunities. Which is why when we had discussed this, I think in previous bargaining sessions, we had lengthened maybe the job posting time, was to allow internal employees the opportunity to apply for jobs. It sounds like how that has worked out is that we've lost applicants to other districts, and that was not the intention there. So we are exploring other ways to hopefully make sure that internal applicants get their needs met, as well as we're bringing in new applicants as well. So we're working on some language. We feel like we could address that need for internal applicants to get be apprised of jobs. We can address that in other ways. So we have some other language that we'll post surrounding that. Down here, we put this: employees may sign up to receive automatic job posting alert emails to be sent at regular intervals of their choosing. I had connected with some members of our HR tech integration team about kind of, right now we have a weekly job alert that we can sign up for, and it sounds like we're migrating to a different job alert platform that will allow us to choose. Hannah's nodding. So we had discussed like that weekly isn't enough for people, and especially for classified staff who may have limited access to technology. That those weekly job posting email alerts are hard. And so it sounds like this is something that might be a really easy ask and is already in the works. So hopefully that's an easy win-win. Our next proposal is down in C4, and this is similar to the conversation that we had earlier today about seniority. This is similar language here. And Brian, you had mentioned that it didn't maybe belong in that article, so we've included it here instead. So essentially this language captures the idea that limited limited student support time, temporary hours. As hours become available at job sites that are temporary, they would, if they work with, an existing employee schedules in the situations where that is possible, that they should be offered to current qualified available employees first in order of seniority. We recognize that that isn't always the case. It doesn't always work out that way. If a recess position becomes available, that might not work with an existing employee schedule, but if there's an additional clerical hour that somebody can take at the end of their workday, we would like to see an existing qualified employee offer that hour before a newer employee gets it or before it is posted online as a new position.
Can I ask you a couple of questions about that?
Yes.
And some of these may seem obvious, but the language doesn't really say it. I'm assuming when you're saying in order of seniority, we're talking within that building though, right? Like if we get an extra hour at school A, but somebody working at school C is more senior, I mean, clearly we can't offer that, so.
Yeah, great question. We were talking site
Okay.
specific, yes.
And ideally, the intention around the word available includes that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were trying to capture some of the conversation we had about the difficulties of this, which was not to bring in all these like unreasonable situations, but as there are available hours that current employees could fill who are more senior, that they should be offered the right of first refusal to those hours, before new employees. So, the next change we
Just one other thought on that. We do have language in the reduction in force article that talks about reinstatement of hours when folks have lost hours. So these things would have to live together, right? Because if we have a current obligation to return hours to somebody who had lost them, that would take precedence over, even if that person for some reason was less senior, but they had lost hours. That would take first place over giving the hours to somebody who happened to be more senior, but these are like new hours.
Right.
I would think. I want to look at that language. I don't remember it exactly without looking at it, but I'd want those concepts to live together and not be in conflict.
Yeah, that's a great point. We'll need to.
Yeah, that's a worthwhile thing to examine
Okay.
and make sure that we're not creating a contradiction.
Mhm.
I think we're on the same page there on the intention, yeah.
Qualified, I mean, I don't wanna, trying to think. The LSS, so like, what does qualified mean? Are they already working in that job category or?
Yes, that was exactly our conversation, was like, okay, if there's I'm trying to think of an example, I can't even think of one, but if there's more, I don't know.
If you already have somebody that's an SCA working at 6.5 hours and you're offering a 7-hour position online, the other half hour should have gone to somebody already working there before it was offered as 7 hours online. Was one of the discussions we had.
As long as there's not like an availability problem.
If it's an
right?
availability or qualification thing.
Yeah,
Then that extra half hour should be delineated to people in the positions already before somebody else comes in at a higher number of hours for the same position.
Okay, so it's, in your example, it's not like we have a bunch of 6.5 hour people currently working and it's like, hey, there's an hour more time, who are we gonna give it to? In your situation, it's like a completely new job is being posted.
It's both.
It's both of those things.
yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks.
yeah.
There are other questions about that.
No, yeah, that answered the question.
Okay, thank you.
Under, I believe we've had some conversation about this in prior bargaining about exit surveys. And we would Our proposal here is to offer employees an option to automatically share responses from the exit survey with the union. And we're open to some conversation about that. I know we've had conversation about that in the past.
I'll ask a question that makes me sound like old or tech not savvy. I mean, I'm assuming that that's possible, like what you would just check a box, like, I would like this information, and then it would automatically send it off to some designated email address or,
That was what we had, yeah, that was our intention.
okay,
G2, I believe, was a clarification of wording.
Oh, it was, yeah.
Yeah, it was just a wording clarification because the original contract language is a little bit unclear. We just added in
it's not all three of those things have to be happening.
correct. That doesn't seem to be the case,
Right, those are,
right?
they're not.
So it's,
it's not
if any
a-
of those things is true, then the
Yeah.
position is designated as temporary.
It's unlikely that all three of those things would ever be true. at the same time.
Right.
Got it.
And then, G4. We wrote that we would like, the district shall provide the reason for the temporary nature of the position in the job posting, so. And here we're just wanting it to reference back to essentially G2, like what about this posting is requiring it to be temporary? That way employees know when they're applying why it's a temporary position. They have that level of understanding.
Could it be as simple as this position is replacing an employee on leave or something like that? I mean,
Yeah, we're not looking for private information, like, we're
Yeah.
definitely not looking for private information to be disclosed, but like. Just generally, I think the conversation that we had as a team was, a lot of the jobs that we see posted are temporary, a lot. of them.
Uh-huh.
And there were questions about why. I believe there was some conversation about at some point in the school year, jobs are always posted as temporary, so there was a question about why that happens. And there was really a desire to understand more why that is happening and why those permanent positions are not being posted as readily. And so it was just a clarification piece for members in terms of hiring and understanding the hiring process and what positions they are applying for. Did you want to clarify?
Yeah, if I could clarify, so, if you're applying for a job and you know you're filling in behind someone who's on leave, that's a limited duration, it's a finite thing, it's never gonna turn into a permanent position for you because that person's coming back. Similarly, grant-funded positions or bond-funded positions, you know that that is temporary because it's dependent on the money. And when the money dries up, then that position's going away. It's never going to be a permanent position. The third category is a little more squishy to address the temporary need of unknown duration. That could potentially turn into a permanent position if the need becomes permanent. It would be nice for employees to have some clarification. Why is this one temporary? What is the duration? You could ask, how long is this leave for this person? Is it 3 months or is it 9 months? Right? That would give the potential employee some clarification on how long before they even go through the hiring process or even filling out the application, how long is this potentially gonna be a temporary position?
Mhm.
Whereas if it's bond funded or grant funded and the bond project is going on for 3 years, then you know, okay, this is only temporary because they have to list it that way because of the funding. But this is really more akin to a permanent thing, because the bond is funded through the next 3 or 4 years.
Mhm.
So it's just giving, it's not asking you to give fine details, it's just, is it to A, B, or C? Is it filling leave because of the funding or some other
Mhm.
squishy category?
It feels like if it was C, you wouldn't be able to say on the posting how long you thought that it was gonna last, right? Because by definition, we don't know. I mean, that's the entirety of C is it's an unknown duration. I mean, up to 1 year,
Yeah.
Right.
you know what I'm saying? Like,
So you could put temporary up to 1 year or unknown duration.
Unknown project duration of less than a year, and the language here is vague enough that you can kind of choose your own adventure.
mhm.
But the intention is that they have some indication, some reason that this is temporary, so they gives them an idea of what they're looking at.
Got it.
Can I share something? Having it, I like the way it is right now to A, B, and C. It is purposely vague. Because for me, if we are gonna start doing age determining, then it gets to a personal of the leave. So I don't know how I feel about that, because if you're gonna say, well, it's for 3 months. It's A, then I think that's a personal information for the other person. So I don't know how to feel about that or how do you.
Certainly, we wouldn't be suggesting you share a person's name, anything about the why they're out. If all it was to replace someone on leave for a duration of 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on whether you think that even that information is personal or not. I mean, if TJ's position gets posted and it's for a leave that's gonna last 3 to 6 months, everybody knows TJ's on the leave for 3 to 6 months. So right? I
Yeah.
mean, he's the only one in that position.
Let me clarify something. I don't think the intention was for us to know the exact duration of the position.
Just
It
wanted to
was
space.
for us to understand when we see just a vast number of temporary positions, what is the reason all of these positions are being listed?
Is it A, is it B?
Is it A, is it B, is it C? Is it some unknown D reason, which is kind of the feeling that we had when we were discussing this is like, we're not really sure if there's maybe some fourth reason why there's all these temporary jobs. So it's just for the clarity and transparency of. It wasn't for this like deep dive into,
Yeah.
is Alex going on leave and for how long and why? It was not for personal.
We're a big, small district, so.
Right,
that's what-
right, yes, it was not, yeah, it wasn't for any kind of personal.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
Certainly, it's a shared interest to protect people's personal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there'd be a fair number of positions where it'd be pretty easy to know who the person is and what.
Yeah. For example, in the nutrition services, all the kitchen assistants are listed as temporary. Is there a reason for that? Which reason is it? Is it funding? Is it just why they're?
There are no current temporary nutrition services positions. So if something's posted incorrectly, I'll make a note of that, but there are
Okay.
none that are currently temporary for nutrition.
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
I was gonna make a note that, we didn't change the language in E1, but we did tease out A, B, and C. Just the paragraph is the same, but we didn't totally, notate that, but it's, so the words are the same on G1. We added A, B, and C with the same sentences
Oh,
that
thank
were
you.
in your paragraph.
Okay.
So just formatting, it just seemed easier to be like G1B if that's the thing that we
Yeah,
Check the numbers on you.
Yeah.
On your last proposal, it started with a big paragraph that we now labeled as one.
Got it.
Move the rest.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I also see that this is what we're gonna talk about later. C2, you guys went back to athlete each month instead of a
Yes.
contract.
Oh my goodness, thank you. I did not mean to skip over that.
Oh,
So, and I do think, and we are gonna talk about this. it sounds like a little bit off the table, and we did have some conversation about this in our planning session. And I do think there is a mechanism in elsewhere in this article, for the union or for individual employees to request kind of a review of the hiring process. If they feel like they've applied for a position, they were not hired for it, they want to know the reasons why. There's a mechanism for that. It takes quite a bit for an employee to go through that process. Especially even to get like a union leader involved in that process and to request that takes quite a bit. And so we also have this mechanism in C2 where our union would receive kind of a regular report that is giving us the names of internal candidates who apply for positions, how often they're hired for those positions. This is something that was bargained a long time ago and we were receiving regularly for years. I can't speak to how prior leadership was using this report or not using this report. What I can speak to is how current leadership has asked for this report. We have asked for this, myself, Bethany, Carla, we came into office in July, we've asked for this regularly. The reason that we've asked for this is because there is a different mechanism in C2, essentially. One thing that we hear a lot from our classified staff is that they feel like they're getting passed over for promotions, for opportunities. They feel like new people are getting hired or other people are getting hired. And they might ask for an individual review of their hiring process, they might not. But this gives us a mechanism to kind of see, like, we could look at one person's hiring process, we could dig deep into one person's hiring process if they ask. Or we could have like a systemic overview of the entire hiring process. It's a different layer of accountability, and it provides us with a different layer of information when we talk to staff when they come to us with concerns. Either we can say we have this insight into just your one specific situation. Okay, you were interviewed, 3 other people were interviewed, here are the reasons that they listed. Or we can say generally, like, the district has an equitable hiring process. We've seen the hiring process. Like, we know internal staff are regularly getting interviewed and having opportunities at jobs. Right now, we don't have insight into the process. So when employees come to us and say, we feel our hiring processes are inequitable, we feel like internal applicants are being passed over for these jobs, we feel like there might be favoritism or what. We don't have the information to say yes or no on that, systemically. The other piece to this is when we bargained this, I know that there were changes that were made technology-wise that made this very difficult contractually to sustain. And I want to express compassion for that. As somebody who works with technology, I understand it sounds like this has become a very manual process and very labor intensive, and it's not our intention to create like unnecessary work for people. These are my colleagues. I don't want them to be doing a lot of unnecessary work. We wouldn't be asking for it if we felt like it was unnecessary. At the same time, when we bargain a legal contract, whatever decision was made about technology should have been made with this language in mind. Like, this was something that we negotiated together, or my previous leadership team negotiated with the district with this language. And whatever decision or change was made wasn't made honoring this language here. And so while I have a lot of compassion for the difficulties that we're currently facing together, I want to make it clear that we bargained it for a reason, and we feel like we really do need this information.
Your proposal has us changing the language from at the end of each month to upon request, and we're absolutely still going to consider that language change, but we do think you're gonna need to examine the problem of being able to provide the information. We certainly will request it, whether or not we request it every month, is a different question, but we will request it periodically, and we don't wanna feel that making that request is punitive, right? We don't wanna hurt you when we make an information request. This is gonna be information we want. Your proposal has it upon request. It needs to be fulfillable without it, driving multiple people crazy. So you might need to think through how you're going to track the information. If you might need to put something in place to track the information that isn't there now. And that would be the case either with the status quo language or with the language you proposed.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, frankly, our language only makes sense if we're in alignment, or if you are not feeling that you need this information on a regular basis, but instead it's like situational. Like someone has come to us and expressed some concern. Now we're gonna make this request. Because even with our language, you could just set like an automatic email to go out on the first of every month saying we request, and we would provide it to you at the end of each month. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
Which I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
oh, no, go for it.
I think we were kind of at a loss about what to propose here, because we've had kind of some information requests off the table, conversations that we've had off the table. We don't want to halt our progress that we've made.
Mhm.
So we're open to more conversation about what is appropriate. Based on your last proposal, that would probably be our intention, would be an automatic monthly request, because we do feel like for it to be an effective mechanism of transparency, it needs to be regular. It needs to not be us only making this request when somebody raises a concern. When we discussed this as a bargaining team, I invoked Fred Keast. I was like, Fred once described our security cameras to me as like, even just putting them up sometimes deters things from happening, because you know that somebody is potentially watching, right? And this is how I feel about this. And I don't mean to imply that something bad is happening in our hiring practices. I just mean that this is a mechanism of transparency that we have open, and when we know that the information is flowing regularly and freely, it's different from me coming to you saying 6 months in, okay, now somebody's coming and now we have a grievance and I need to now pass this. This is just an open communication, transparently, this is our hiring process. And that's what we feel we bargained and that we want to have.
Yeah, understood. I mean, that's good feedback. Again, for us, it was sort of like, do you really need this every month, or do you only need this when something comes up? Because if you don't really need it every month, it is labor intensive to provide. I'm hearing you guys say, we do want it every month. So in light of that, I don't know that our proposed change would really even accomplish much anyways, right?
It's important that we focus in on the issue, which is that in either language, either your proposal or the status quo language, we have a problem in that it is clearly very, very challenging for you to provide this information.
Yeah.
I think that problem needs to get fixed.
Yeah, I don't know
Somehow.
enough about this.
Yeah,
I don't know enough about what the specifics of it are, but.
yeah, I'm sure Marta's gonna be happy to tell you. And
Go on, Hannah.
for what it's worth, we would love for you to receive some relief on that front, so that this isn't, this should not be an arduous or super challenging information request to fill.
Mhm.
We're happy to offer some grace as far as, if you're gonna institute a new program or something that tracks this information so you can more easily pull it. We're willing to have a conversation on grace of looking backwards, but this is important information.
So the substance of it, I guess, one question would be like, are there pieces of this that you don't necessarily need, or is there different stuff, like, for example, how many externals were interviewed? Like, is that a relevant data point, you know? Because that might be one of the things that makes it a hard request to fulfill, like, what, you know, and I don't mean this, but like, what difference does that make if 10 externals were interviewed or 12? If we're trying to say, were our internals interviewed and et cetera, you know what, I don't know, maybe there's a good reason for it.
That's a really interesting question. I certainly think if you guys have some conversations and there's specific data that makes
It makes it
that,
challenging.
that makes it more challenging than others, we're willing to hear that. And,
Okay.
yeah, if that's it.
Maybe that's how we'll go at it. We'll dig into that and say, what
Yeah.
is it that's causing the challenge and come back to you with,
Yeah.
with our specific challenge.
And also, we have discussed a lot that we were hoping that there was a technology solution that would not make it not so labor intensive for you guys. So we really want to work with you on this.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you for the conversation. We'll kind of circle back.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Now that I've built up all this goodwill with Hannah, I need some, oh, you already did it. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Hannah.
This one's an initial proposal, right?
Yes.
Yeah, if you want to start.
Yes. Here we are.
So we're doing a lot of work in union rights. There have been some changes to the law. And we have some kind of new interests as well, in clarifying a few things. So, it's pretty big. In many cases, we have kept some language. But in this document, even when we kept language, we're showing it as status quo using the code. But then also we've got the status quo language, in some cases, just like completely struck out, as well, so that you have access to, that original status quo language there. In A1, we are preserving this language from somewhere else, in F. We just felt like it made a lot more sense to put it here in facilities and equipment, as it kind of refers to that. So that's just a move. In A2, we're adding an S in the word types, just to make that make sense. I'm gonna get into E. This is where
You still want to use the fax machines?
the what? I'm sorry, I used
As
the word,
long
I don't know.
You want me?
In release time, so, and for those who are watching at home, and those that don't know, there was a big, change in the law. House Bill 2016, made really large changes to PECBA, the Public Employee Collective Bargaining Act, around release time, new employee orientations, and a few other pieces. And so our interest is really in making sure that the contract aligns really well with the law and also provides clarity for us as a union on how some of these things are going to be done where the law isn't necessarily clear. So in one, we're calling out that it is in accordance with Oregon law, designated representatives of the union shall be granted release time for the following pieces. And A through H, these are all the pieces out of House Bill 2016, the new edition. Generally, these things are, bargaining sessions, investigative meetings, grievance procedures, labor management meetings, testifying in a legal proceeding, and performing other duties that are mutually agreeable. So this would be, essentially just codifying what is already in the law as far as the specific uses of unbucketed, we'll call, release time. The previous contract had a bucket of 1,000 hours. We're preserving that concept, which we'll get to in a little bit, for other things that are not A through H here in E1. Do you have any questions about that piece before we move to the next one?
Nope.
In 2, and we're having some discussion about this, around this current bargaining, but this is obviously for the successor agreement. And we want to be clear that, for the purpose of calculating benefits and overtime, that release time is considered hours worked. We don't want our members who are going to be scheduled to work overtime to do some release time and then not be in overtime. That doesn't make any sense to us, so we want them to be considered hours worked. In 3, we're looking to collaborate with you to get clarity, or, yeah,
I just
Michelle.
have a quick question about that. Consider the hours worked. Are you considering them paid as well?
These
the
release time, these release time hours are paid hours. Absolutely, and that is the case under the law. For instance, if there's a grievance procedure under the law that the public employer has to pay for the union representative to be there for that grievance procedure. Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Absolutely.
When you say time spent on union release, are you referring to the time spent doing A through H above?
Certainly that, but there is also other union release time that we'll get to in, specifically in 6.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it could be both.
yes, yes. So in 3, we're really, one thing that the law does not make super clear, and both teams dealt with this some in our ground rules negotiations, is how bargaining prep time is handled. And we would like to collaborate with you to get clarity on that. We're proposing that beginning 1 month before the commencement of negotiations for a successor agreement and continuing until ratification, time spent by union bargaining team members in negotiation sessions and preparation for such sessions shall be paid for by the district, that be release time. And these hours shall be separate from the release pool referenced later in 4E6. Certainly, if you have an interest in, well, it is not our proposal that this be unlimited. Like that we could declare our entire bargaining team on full-time release for the next 3 months. And so we are expecting some language from you that as we're understanding that your interest is going to be to put some walls around this because we don't think it should be unlimited. We also don't really have the language to protect that interest of yours. So we are expecting some language back from you that does protect that interest. Any questions there? Does that make sense? In 5, we're proposing that the union president and or designees shall be granted partial or full-time leaves up to a total of 8 hours per day, which is essentially codifying the practice that we currently have. Most of the rest of this is status quo language from that clause until the end, barring any unforeseen and unusual challenges for the district, the employee or employees shall be returned to their original work site or work sites. And I believe this language is language we pulled from our our MOU that was agreed upon for our current situation where we have 2 part-time release officers.
So when you say up to a total of 8 hours a day, you mean combined?
That's correct. Yeah, and we put that in there just to clarify, that, you know, there may be some situation that is agreeable to both parties where we have, you know, two people at 3 hours a day and another person at 2 hours a day. That would be within the realm of possibility under this language. In 6, so the current status quo language gives the union 1,000 hours for a broad range of things that many of which are now included in House Bill 2016 and therefore included in our proposal in E1, that A through H. We would like to keep a bucket. There are a rather large set of things that aren't included in House Bill 2016. Those things include trainings, union meetings, worksite leader activities that we may be doing, organizing, things that will strengthen our workplaces, things that will ensure that problems stay at the lowest and most informal level and that big problems don't kind of bubble up and become issues for the district overall. So we want to keep the concept of this bucket that we could use these hours for any purpose of the union's discretion. We're proposing that bucket go from 1,000 down to 750 hours. And we're keeping the status quo language that should a substitute be necessary in 6A, that the union reimburse the cost of that substitute. And the language in B there, that the union can request additional time contingent upon your approval.
And then we just left all of the original language from E in there because there were so many changes, rather than try and.
I think I'm going to hand it off to you, G. Do you have any questions before we move it?
I don't think so right now, but other folks should speak up to you. There's a lot of moving parts, so as we kind of process it, we may come back to you with some.
Yeah, and please do.
Okay.
Yeah, there are a lot of.
Okay, but I am ready. You guys are ready to move on.
For G, just a small change here for staff announcements / presentations. We've added some language about presentations at staff meetings and then also district gatherings. And to be really transparent, the discussion here was surrounding the all staff kickoff and the opportunity for the union to address staff at the all staff kickoff. We understand that for the union to make a presentation of some sort at like a large employee event like that, there would likely need to be some kind of communication beforehand or oversight into what we would be saying. And we're totally okay with that. So, you know, we're open to some conversation about like what that might look like if we feel like we need to codify that in the contract. But we would like to just have a mechanism for addressing staff briefly at staff gatherings.
When you're talking about staff and particularly at like the all staff kickoff, are you talking about classified staff? All district employees? This is a topic we've kind of gone around with HEA as well. Like, what are we doing at the all staff kickoff? And are there times when you, and we've asked this question of them, need to be in front of all employees or just those that are bargaining unit positions, you know, classified employees? So just curious as to when you envision what you would be presenting?
I think generally speaking, we like to work with our HEA partners. We're looking for the same rights our HEA partners have. We were reluctant to put walls around this, knowing that, some of our union reps might not. We don't want to lock ourselves into like, we're gonna speak for 10 minutes because, we don't always necessarily want to speak for 10 minutes.
Sure.
But we like to have the opportunity to get in front of people and introduce our leadership team. Hey, we're your union.
Yeah,
So, yeah, if our licensed colleagues are at an event and have a right to address staff, we also feel we should have a right to address them.
yeah, no disagreement there. Where we landed with them was like, when it's everybody, they have an opportunity to introduce themselves. Hey, we're the HEA leadership and here's, my name is, but when they're getting anything more into unionish business, there's no reason for like the administrators and supervisor, super techs and whatever to sit there and listen to a presentation that's primarily union business, as opposed to like introductions of who you are and your role and whatnot. So that's kind of where we've tried to distinguish that with the licensed group.
That feels very fair. I mean, we haven't really discussed specifics of the team. We imagined there would be some back and forth with this article. Unless you'd like to just accept it all, that would be great.
We would love that.
But yeah, I mean, that seems pretty much in line with what we had discussed. We weren't anticipating we'd get up and give a 30-minute no employee orientation at the all staff kickoff, but.
Yeah.
All right, well, think about it.
Maybe we'll reflect back on that language and see if we.
Yeah, that's what I was
try
thinking.
and draw it in here.
Yeah, put that in there, because really it's the superintendent's. You
Right.
know what I mean? It's his or her opportunity to address all staff in that role, and that's why I think we held those meetings is for that purpose. So the superintendent really leads the charge of that and what that's like, so.
But yeah, I mean, with the license, we did agree that there would be an opportunity for their leadership. And honestly, we were contemplating that your group would do the same. So we weren't thinking of it as only the HEA would
Right.
get a chance to have that.
Yeah,
Okay, because that's pretty much what we're asking.
Yeah, great.
okay.
Okay,
So under I for information, we just added a little piece here that I think will be helpful for both of us. So when an information request is made by the union, upon receiving the request, the district will acknowledge the receipt in writing and provide an expected timeline for the completion of the request. We think this is important, just, hopefully this will never happen, but were we to ever need to move forward into some kind of legal process like arbitration, having that timeline established will be important for both of us, which is why we've added that here. And then down in 2B, we crossed out this personal and work electronic mail addresses because it is redundant. It's later here in these bullets.
Also, what's electronic mail?
Maybe that was from 1990.
Like the fax machine.
yeah, I was gonna say, it's with your fax machine.
We still have those, right?
We still use
We
ours,
You
still.
still use your fax
Yeah.
machine?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Come down to technology services, that's great.
Yeah.
Are there any VCRs down there in Texas?
Oh,
yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Welcome, Bethany.
Morning. So for M, we have quite an ambitious proposal here, and some of this is really like an idea that's been born out of some of our collaborative conversations that we've had in labor management. This is an idea. So we're holding some of this with open hands, but we have had some discussion on the idea of like a new hire in service or potential collaborative like onboarding process for classified staff, recognizing that, as a union, we have, legal rights to host new employee orientations, on paid time with new employees. And we'd like to do that in some collaborative way with HSD. So one of the ideas that we had talked about was this idea of a new hire in-service day, similar to what happens for licensed staff, just maybe like on a smaller scale. So in M1, what we are floating is the idea of a new hire in-service day for classified. And this would be at the beginning, like this is just for classified that are hired over the summer at the very beginning. That this would cover some onboarding topics that include places, times of work, district operations, introductions to supervisors, access to equipment, communication systems. One of the things that we find is that a lot of the onboarding process for classified is, can be a little bit more chaotic than for licensed. And especially in my role, I cover the help desk, and I find that I'm doing a lot of like one-off onboarding with staff. And so we'd really like to partner and help make that process a little more streamlined at the beginning of the year. And two, what we're asking for is that when that date is chosen, that it would be communicated with the union, and that we would be given 1 hour of time at that function to provide a new employee orientation, a union new employee orientation at that new hire in-service day. And then also that we'd be provided a 1 hour chunk of time at any classified summit or any professional development day. So essentially what we're thinking here is that we'd have like a 1 hour session, anytime a professional development opportunity is offered for classified staff, that we'd get a workshop window there. Paid time where employees could come and attend an employee orientation.
And to be clear, the House Bill 2016 addition to PECBA does have expanded rights on new employee orientations. But we need to come to a mutual understanding of how we're doing that with you, or else we imperil getting in the way of the work, which we have no intention of doing. So we want a process that makes really good sense for both parties. We can't be running new employee orientations once a week at every one of our work sites. That would be a hardship for us. It also will get in the way of the work, and it will be terrible for the district. And so while we have the right to essentially do that under House Bill 2016, we want to come to a collaborative place with you to do this efficiently, so it doesn't get in the way of the work. And it's really healthy for new hires coming into the district.
Can I answer a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Classified summit or professional development day, does that mean that it's a full day focus for classified or any professional development?
It's a great question. I think we were thinking through the various opportunities that are offered to classified staff. And we were trying to think of what they are, or what they were called, and we were like, okay, we know there's like the summit. We don't know what they're all called, so we were trying to do like a catch-all bucket of like, basically, if there's an opportunity for classified staff where they're having a professional development opportunity, we want to have an opportunity to be a part of that as an option for them to attend.
Follow-up questions, there are some professional development that happened with a combination of license. So is that something that you're envisioning too? I mean, with adoption of curriculum or safety training, that's a professional development. Is that what you're looking?
Is it like a workshop style?
No, it
format?
would be professional development.
You're talking about professional development that's exclusively licensed.
No,
Oh,
we're conversation.
it's both.
Yeah, there's some that are classified and licensed.
You know, I think if we can get all the way through there might be language later that hits on it, maybe. And then maybe we can discuss it more. And I'm
Yeah.
looking at some of my team to.
Just one other question,
Yeah.
clarifying question I had. So are you, because transportation, during the summer, we do tons of classes just so drivers and assistants can keep up their certifications, like first aid, we may do 7 or 8 first aid courses over a summer and stuff like that. Or is that what you're talking about? You're just talking like when a big group of classified?
We're imagining a big day.
Okay,
If
Yes.
you do a big day and
Like
you
the
have class.
classified summit we had at the end.
yeah.
of the year.
It was
Okay,
like
so that's
summer summit, usually classified, I don't know if they're different.
Like, those are the two.
Yeah, there's usually like two large events. Yeah.
That makes sense.
For 3. So we recognize that hiring for classified is a constant. And so it would be great if they all got hired over the summer and we were just like set, but that's not what happens. And so as we proceed throughout the school year, as employees, continue to be hired, we would like to coordinate with the district to determine the most efficient schedule for these new employee orientations, recognizing that they need to happen monthly so that each employee who is hired by the district has an opportunity to meet the union and have this employee orientation. So we would be hosting at least one per month, and then if needed, additional new employee orientations shall take place at the discretion of the union. One key piece I missed. The meeting shall take place during work hours and attendance shall be required. So these are paid, attendance is required for employees.
And that again is in line with the House Bill 2016 additions to the law. But this is a process for which we can figure this out together and make it work really efficiently for both parties. So we were imagining that as you're making hires, you guys can figure out, well, everyone we hired is for Hill High this month. If that's the case, then that convenient location should be Hill High. Maybe they're all over the district and you're going to pick a location that just makes the most sense, that it's the most convenient, that maybe is central. But that they happen once a month so that we're able to do them efficiently for ourselves as well. And that you're able to schedule it and these don't get in the way of the important work that you have to do with new folks as you're bringing them on.
And I think, one of the things we had talked about in labor management is this being kind of a collaborative thing too, about implementing some of this, what we had envisioned as like this new hire in service, there being some element of like, we're doing this onboarding, welcome to the district, we're also doing this, here's your union, collaborative, not at the same time, but,
I don't know that it has happened, but what about if there's no new hires?
that would be really interesting. That would,
What have you done?
that would be like, I don't know if it would be a celebration or like, I don't know. Yeah, your HR is like, that would be great.
Either very, very good or it's very, very bad.
Yeah, if we're fully staffed, is it because we're fully staffed or because
Yeah.
no one's
Nobody's-
flying? Yeah.
In either case, laughing or crying, I think you would not need to do.
Yeah. That's fair, yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering, how do you see this, like operationally, I was also thinking about like different positions that require student support and that continuing. So like, there's secondary schedules, there's elementary schedules. So how do you see yourselves kind of bringing that to meet the need of both levels?
And I think that comes to like coordinating
Yeah.
what would be the best time. That's the struggle we're having with how best to host these without unpaid time, without interrupting district operations. For House Bill 2016,
Yeah, we
they
should get
happen on work
access.
time. We're required access. But we're not wanting to go into every school and interrupt time and take people off the floor. So
Yeah.
we're hoping like bringing people together one time is less disruptive than,
Well, and if what the district in a given month or even in general, if it's the position of the district that we can do one, but it's gonna be really impossible to get everyone to one.
Right.
We're willing to like talk about like more than one. We would like there to be at least one, right? Where we could get to most folks, but if they're because of schedule times and things like that,
Yeah.
you need to do 2 or 3. I think we would work with you on that and figure that out. But what we don't want to do is for every schedule and every work site every month, that is going to be crazy making for both the district and us
And would you consider these in-person meetings or virtual meetings?
in person. Barring, another terrible pandemic. Panoramic. Yeah, Amanda?
I was just gonna say, vector training for new hires has to happen within a certain amount of time, on paid time. You have to fit it in and get coverage if you're in certain student support roles by the deadline. And so I think it'll operate similar to that. I mean, that's how I envision that. If it can be scheduled, either one secondary, one elementary, or just the one. That has to be done for new hires, and it could just be part of the checklist box too.
And would you envision that your presentation would be a full hour? Because I was thinking if I was I'm just kind of gonna go, Free Orchards is one of our most our schools, and they have to come all the way like to the district office. So it takes the time for them to travel plus the hour of time. So I'm just kind of trying to envision what that looks like. Are you thinking that when it comes to providing that presentation, it would be actually less than an hour because it's including that time for people to travel from
So
them?
we didn't put the 1 hour in this specific piece, because if you have 2 people 1 month, we're not gonna need the full hour. We can work with you on that,
Okay,
right? Under the law, we should get an hour of access,
yeah,
but in some cases, we won't need an hour of access. If you have 20 people, probably we're gonna need an hour because our presentation is a certain length, and then the questions with that number of people will get us to an hour. I hope that makes sense.
yeah, thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things running around. my
Yeah.
mind, like what this looks like operationally, and also ensuring that we're supporting students, especially school-based situations.
Absolutely. Our intention is to do this collaboratively with you so that you're able to balance those things. Absolutely. We don't want to do this. We don't want to just go banging around at work sites to get this done as per our legal right. That just doesn't make any sense to us. We want to work with you to do it in a way that really works for both parties.
Thank you.
And then for in-4. So if there are additional in-person employee events, the union shall be permitted to set up a table at those events to meet with employees before, after, and during breaks. So I think that kind of maybe hits on that language of if there are combination events where licensed and classified are there, or if there's transportation, training, which I think we've done before, set up a table. And then in 5, no employee shall suffer a loss in compensation, seniority, leave accrual, or any other benefits as a result of participating in or attending the union's presentation.
We are finding, it's worth you knowing that we started a new program of union, new employee orientations this school year, and they were really powerful. And we're finding that is, really amazing. It's not just for the union, it's really great for them. They connect with coworkers. They, typically can even ask some questions that, they might have been embarrassed to ask a supervisor, but, coworkers can answer that question. So sometimes it's not just union stuff, but it is providing connection in a way that we think will also offer greater stability for new hires coming in to feel like they're part of a working family where they want to stay.
Have any questions?
I don't, again, just as a kind of process this and work through it, we probably will have some additional questions, but I don't have any stuff that I can.
Yeah, we would happily welcome questions on this for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
So we also have we prepared a proposal on 24. I'd like to discuss as a team and integrate your proposal into ours.
Makes sense.
So we could discuss and bring that back after lunch. We only have 7 minutes anyway.
Yeah.
So,
I think that makes sense. Then we get on a back and forth track instead of,
yeah, it'll get weird. It'll get weird.
So I appreciate you doing that. I think that's great. Good suggestion. Okay, thanks for those.
Excellent.
And how long are we gonna do lunch and leave?
Lunch caucus combo, it sounds
Yeah.
like.
We're back at one, unless, I mean, we're 6 minutes early. Let's come back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it works.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Redo me now.
But I'll like.
Have you heard how your daughter handled it?
Welcome back.
Yeah, where do you guys wanna pick up?
Great question. We have,
We have 24, we could do that.
Yeah.
sure,
That sounds great. Should we do that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll let you. That, I never heard something about it.
Article 24 in grievance and arbitration. We're not proposing, huge sweeping changes to this, but we do have some significant interests to talk about. I'll walk through it. In A2, I believe we've just moved that to a place that kind of makes more sense in the flow. In 3, and this is a little bit of a theme in this proposal, we're looking to get ourselves a little bit more time in the grievance process. As we had conversations about doing that, we thought that if we just move from 30 calendar days to 30 days, which in this is district business days, that offers us a little bit of breathing room. We also understand that there would be an interest both for the union and for the district that we not be extending the timeline on dismissals. And in the case of a dismissal, if that needs to be grieved, we're gonna wanna move quickly, and I'm sure you don't want to extend the timeline that we would be doing that, because that goes through a whole process and arbitration potentially, and then someone gets back to work, you might have to pay back pay, so you want that to move quicker. So we're proposing 30 days for grievances unless the cause is a dismissal, in which case the grievance must be initiated within 20 days. Which would be very similar to the 30 calendar days that you currently have. It'd be a little less than that in most months. We're agreeing with you on 5. We don't mind you eliminating this as it's been eliminated from the statute. We feel like the grievance binding arbitration process is absolutely sufficient for our members. Okay. Moving on to B3, B2. Again, we're just looking to get ourselves a little bit more time in these steps. We don't want, most of us with the union are doing this work in addition to other work duties. And we lose sleep on some of these timelines, like we don't want to miss a timeline. And we also don't want to be pushed towards arbitration. We think that that's a shared interest. We want enough time to investigate, deliberate on grievances, get information from you, and be able to, instead of just being pushed from step to arbitration, have the time to really think about all of those steps, whether or not we want to move on to the next step. And so we're proposing moving the 10-day period on step 2 to 15 days. We're proposing the same on step 3, moving from 10 days to 15 days. Any questions on that before I move on? In step 4, the arbitration step, and B, the selection of the arbitrator. We noticed that it did not specify the order of striking arbitrators. The status quo says the parties shall meet to alternatively strike one name from the list until one remains, and such person shall be the arbitrator. But it doesn't specify where that would begin. or even if that process is mutually agreeable. So we're proposing adding the language, the order of striking arbitrator shall begin with the district.
Yeah, you want to know something funny? You know how this often happens if it's me and another attorney? One of us says, I'm gonna flip a coin now. We're on the phone, we're on the phone. I'm gonna flip a coin now. What do you call? And then we say, oh, it was tails, you know, so it's just humorous because there's no way to
Right.
tell whether you're telling the truth. or not.
Yeah, right. I'm like, if you can see it on Zoom right now, what am I going to say?
Yeah, they're like, how do you always win?
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
We certainly think there are advantages to going, first or last.
I always offer to go first because I don't care.
That's great to hear. I think we slightly prefer, going last, in that process. In general procedures under C, we're making a few clarifications in C4. Failure by the respondent at any step of the grievance procedure to communicate the decision in writing on a grievance within the specified time limits shall just automatically advance the grievance instead of permit it, which would then, it kind of indicates that some action needs to be taken if it's permitting it, but it just advances the grievance to the next step. And then failure by the grievant at any step of this procedure to appeal a decision to the next step within the specified time limits, we're proposing that shall render the grievance abandoned and strike the status quo language, be deemed acceptance of the decision rendered at that step. And the reason is that when this happens, it can be really harmful to a member or members if this were to happen. And it is reasonable that you want a deadline, and that if we miss a deadline, that our grievance becomes abandoned. It is another worse step for not only is the grievance abandoned, but now because we've missed a deadline, we're accepting your determination in that situation, which could create a practice or a precedent that longstanding we would have a hard time dealing with until we go back into bargaining. We would love to prevent that. It's worth saying that when you, as the district, miss a deadline, it just advances. When we miss a deadline, we lose our bacon.
Yeah.
And so we'd like to mitigate some of that loss. It's understandable that we would have to have a deadline, to some degree anyway, and that our grievance be abandoned seems much more reasonable to us than that it be abandoned and we're now accepted a practice potentially that we don't like.
Gotcha. Do you agree that from a practical level, it's not much difference with that immediate grievance? That immediate grievance is then done at that point, right?
Yeah, the grievances, you could consider it withdrawn, abandoned, the grievance is dead.
You're trying to avoid us later saying, well, it says
You
here,
accepted-
you accepted it, so that must mean you
Yeah.
agree with that position.
Correct.
Yeah, if we miss a deadline, that's bad on us and it's bad enough that
Yeah.
that grievance is dead. But we don't wanna have to then, that be thrown at us later, like, you
Yeah.
missed a deadline, which means you've accepted this forever. Oh my God, no, we
Got
don't.
Okay.
In terms of process, when the grievance is abandoned, does it come back up?
No.
It's just.
No, that particular grievance could,
Doesn't
that
restart.
grievance cannot come back up again. The grievance process, like, you have to keep advancing towards arbitration or withdrawal or mutual agreement are the ways of ending the process. Mutual agreement could be a settlement or, those are the ways that they do that, yeah.
And when you say render the grievance abandoned, does that mean that issue with that staff member?
That one only
Right.
grievance, yes.
And then if there's another same issue with a different staff member, then that's be brought up.
Yeah, and it's worth, yes, and it's worth saying that some issues are persistent. And so if, for instance, someone has a pay issue and we file a grievance and we miss a deadline, that grievance may be abandoned, but that pay issue might be recurring. such that we can file another grievance on what you might consider to be the same issue, but, you know, we're using a different deadline now because it keeps happening.
Hey, can I go back up to A2?
Yeah.
I can't find, just reading through here, another place where there's like a global definition of days. Did you see one? Sometimes it says calendar days, sometimes it says days. Am I missing in some place where it says days?
There's, we've been looking through Article 2
Yeah.
definitions about this also, and there's definitions of days, district business days, working days, calendar days.
Yeah, but it doesn't say, as used in this contract, the word days shall always mean,
Correct. So with the placement of this language previously, because the language that's now in 3 was previously in 2. So the grievance language was pertaining to calendar days.
Yeah.
And then therefore, the rest of the stuff in this article was meant to mean, district business days. And so I think that's why we had it worded this way and defined this way in this article. We really want, for the sake of clarity and also for the sake of the workload, grievances are incredibly time consuming to process. And for our union representatives who are processing them, as Nathaniel mentioned, we're working our full-time positions as we're processing these grievances. Oftentimes they require information requests, multiple meetings, and so being able to process these, it just takes time. And we need to have adequate time to do it properly so that they don't keep coming up. And so we were just trying to, you know, get clarity on what that days meant. And that's also what in B, why we expanded.
And I'm looking for the
50
status
days.
quo. Is 2 not in the status quo?
No, it's 3 on there.
It's 3 in the status quo.
Yeah, we just
moved
moved
it
it.
up so that it would be, it
Yeah.
would pertain to the entire article, and then we wouldn't have like a specific call out of calendar days.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 2 is not new language.
It's not new
just
language, it's just
shifted,
new.
like,
Just
shifted,
moved.
like,
But by shifting it, it does change the
Okay,
impact on the
great.
other language in the article, which is why we have it called out in that way and why we discussed it this way in this
Right.
conversation. We want to be clear about what our intention is with the language.
I imagine that originally that days definition for this article was put in the contract so that you didn't have to refer to district business days as many times as days are referred to.
Yeah.
Just like, well, we're just gonna say days in this article and have that mean district business days.
yeah, I don't know why it's constructed as it is now where that is the usage of days except with the filing of the initial grievance
I think
in
it's,
calendar days.
it's always been a struggle for the union to process grievances efficiently in a way that honors our members. It's always been an issue of timing. It's tough to do this work. And so we've always tried to push for more timing. I really see the value in having these timelines, because it is important to move the work forward. For us, for our members, for everybody involved, it is important to preserve evidence that might be essential in these grievances as we're processing them. So no timeline is not a reasonable
Mhm.
ask. So we're wanting to preserve a reasonable timeline, and that's why we've made the request that we've made here, with the district business days instead of the calendar days, and with the 15 days instead of the 10.
Got it. Okay. You guys work with this. Thank you.
Any other questions on 24? You want to move on to 26? So on mileage, 26, I first want to say we certainly understand your interest that you brought forth in your proposal earlier today and not wanting people to hold on to their reimbursements and submit them like once a year. We absolutely understand that interest. It's also important to mention that, this reimbursement money is money that our members have already paid or are already committed to pay as far as gas, wear and tear on their vehicle. And so it is a reimbursement. It is not compensation. We don't think it's appropriate for our members to use it like a compensation bonus, which was your interest in not having them do that. So the issue we had kind of with your language, I'll just say, is that it was very prescriptive. To qualify for reimbursement must, really meant that a lot of our members were going to have to do something very much stricter than they currently are. We wanted to preserve your intention here, and make sure that we don't have members who are waiting a long time to submit for reimbursement, that they do so in a timely manner. So we're proposing that employees shall submit documentation of mileage within 30 district business days of the travel. We believe that is the policy, even though your proposal said 30 days. When we were talking about that, we had a challenge with that, which for many of us would mean that if you want to just regularly do this and be timely, kind of have to do it twice a month, which is like a bit more documentation than I think most of our members want to endeavor to do. And that's because, you know, if you drove on the first of the month and it's a 31-day month, you're gonna have to submit, you know, on the 29th or the 30th of that month to be in compliance with that language. Also, you know, having a few days after the month is over or whatever to be able to submit it makes a lot of sense to us. So 30 district business days of the travel. And then we understand that your interest is that, you know, if it's really painful for you, that you kind of want a rejection date. And so we're allowing for that here. The district may reject reimbursements that are submitted over 60 district business days after travel. So we're codifying a deadline that our members should get in the habit of submitting their mileage within 30 district business days, and that you can reject reimbursements that are after 60 days. And it does say may reject. You can still honor their reimbursement that is submitted after that time. We would like you to have the ability to honor it as well. But if you feel the need to reject it, we think 60 district business days is reasonable there.
I'm going to defer my questions to Michelle.
I don't have a question at this time.
Yeah, just looking at the policy real quick, but it's actually longer than I thought it would be. But I don't have any questions either. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
One clarifying piece on the policy, we looked it up and it says very clearly working days. So it isn't calendar days, it's working days, which we don't have defined. We have work days defined in the contract, but not working days, but presumably it's days when employees are regularly scheduled to work. And so that would vary very substantially throughout the year, depending on their contract.
Okay. Thank you.
gonna share ours.
Okay, that's great. Yeah.
Feel a little floor.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Work, Ray,
Thank you, Ray.
or whoever Ray called.
Thank you, Ray.
Thanks for that. Okay. Okay, this is a response to the proposal you brought this morning or earlier today on Article 9, resting meal breaks. So a couple of things, we adopted the one interrupted, one working notation there under the 14 hours and 14 hours, 1 minute to 18 hours. You know, it's interesting because you had said it, and I didn't even look back, in a prior version, you had it say either unpaid or paid. And both of those references feel useful to us,
Right.
you know what I mean? And so we kept it as uninterrupted and one working, but then added that asterisk down there that, I mean, it's as much for our supervisors as anything
Sure.
to know what that means.
Yeah, I think clarity is positive.
Yeah, the one difference that we had, and I think it just kind of got lost in the shuffle, if you look on the next page on E. It's one word, but it's a substantive difference. So if the employee is required by the supervisor or designee to perform duties during a meal break, the break shall be fully paid. That's consistent. Yours says, and the employee shall be provided an additional break of 30 continuous minutes, and ours has or. And so then I took a trip back through the bully regs, and that's what I found, is that if you end up having to work during your meal break, even if you've already taken 20 minutes of your meal break, the entire meal break is then becomes paid, but it doesn't necessarily then, on top of that, another meal break gets scheduled. I mean, I think under the combination of E and F, that could be the result. You could say, hey, you weren't able to get your whole meal break, and so I'm gonna try and put that in the, you know, at 40 minutes from now, because we've got this 60-minute bracket here. So anyway, for us, it felt more like an or than an and. So that is still the one difference between our proposals. Other than, I guess, the asterisk part, which I was kind of assuming we'd all be in agreement on.
Yeah, and thank you for that. Yeah, yeah, we'll discuss and talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what we had after caucus. Let's see what time we have, 1:34. We might be able to. I'd like to talk about whether there's anything else that we'd be able to get a response to you on today. I'm not sure. But I'd like to have maybe a quick caucus on that. I don't know if you guys had anything else on the agenda.
We're
To talk about.
kind of discussing it. I
Yeah.
think there is a value with us caucusing and coming back briefly.
Okay,
And you might find a value there too, which would be great.
Yes.
Yeah, why don't we plan to come back at 2?
okay. That works.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll also be ready to talk about what articles we'll be bringing forward, hopefully, for the next session.
Yeah.
To help Hannah.
Yeah.
Great.
Organize. Nice.
I have a question about the Article 9E, the or, does that mean, if I'm working and then my meal break is interrupted then it's gonna get paid and I'm never gonna get a meal break?
I think it all depends on what's going on that day. I think one possibility is you were supposed to take your meal break from 12 to 12:30 and all hell broke loose and you got part of that meal break and you had to come back to work and there's just not another time to put that meal break. I think that's a possibility under that language. I think the other possibility is that meal break, it just gets put later on in the day.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
The interesting thing about, I'm glad Tiffany asked this question because I'm thinking through the or and it's my brain and the Venn diagrams are coming together here such that if someone's meal break is interrupted and that's an unpaid meal break. And then they're provided an additional meal break of 30 continuous minutes. That's an unpaid 30 additional minutes. So let's say I take 20 minutes of my meal break and then it's interrupted. That's 20 unpaid minutes. And now I'm gonna be given another 30-minute break. Right? So with the or, it means that I'm now having 50 minutes of unpaid time.
Yeah, I don't intend that, so I'm trying to think of how to solve that. If your meal
Yeah.
break gets interrupted,
Of continuous.
that entire duration of your meal break is paid,
Right.
no matter what.
Yeah.
It's that you might end up having then also, you may have a subsequent duty-free lunch provided and you might not, depending on what's going on. It's
Yeah.
not always gonna be but it will always be that original meal break is completely paid.
I'll just to workshop it a little bit, is it that a meal break, that break shall be fully paid and the employee may be provided an additional meal break?
I think that's it.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, I certainly, yeah, one issue just with that, just to say, I'm not sure that we would have problems with that language, but certainly there will be managers who will interpret that to mean that they can interrupt these breaks and just pay them and then do nothing else.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a shared interest that not.
I agree.
be the
I mean, to me,
case.
you would have to show an undue hardship. You know, if an employer does not provide a meal period to an employee under section 2 of this rule, we have a burden to show that it would impose an undue hardship, et cetera. It's also going to be a cost issue from the district standpoint if we have supervisors basically. It's like authorizing an extension of 30 minutes a shift every single time.
Yeah.
You know, there's going to be questions about
makes sense.
what's going on here.
Yeah, that makes sense. That understanding alone might be enough.
Yeah, we don't want that to happen either. I mean,
Yeah.
fundamentally, people need to eat, but also we don't want to have a bunch of shifts being extended without approval by 30 minutes. So we have a lot of motivation to not have that happen.
I hear that. Yeah, there's an incentive for you to make sure that they do get a 30-minute unpaid break if the one interrupted heard. Thank you for that.
I think there'd be less of an incentive, and it's probably good the rule is written as it is, so that if we interrupt your meal break 15 minutes in, we only have to pay you for that 15 minutes that was interrupted. But, you know, then you might have supervisors like nitpicking or taking chunks of people's meal breaks without much consequence. So
Right.
it's probably good. That's why it's written as it's written.
Okay. We'll bring this into caucus,
Okay.
discuss, come back at 2.
Okay, sounds great.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Can we stay right here? Did you want to stay right here?
Yeah.
That'd be so great.
Right, we're on.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we're still working on Article 9. We do really appreciate your contributions on that today. The asterisk, we have no problems with. We think that's great clarity. We're gonna need a little more caucus time to get back to you on it, and the reason is E. And we'll say that we're gonna try to find language that doesn't use an and or an or. Just so that I think that clarity in that clause is needed and that conjunction is causing us all problems. Having said that, we do believe that it's the law that if someone's unpaid meal break is interrupted, that break be paid and that they also receive a break. And when the breaks are scheduled lawfully, that is, as close to the middle of the shift as possible, there is enough time to do that through F. We definitely don't want to craft a situation where our members are not getting breaks because a manager thinks that they have an option here. Right, and so that's our challenge. We'll get you some language back on that next session.
Okay, sounds good. We talked about agenda for next time as well. Report out.
Yeah, because we also look at the amount of time that we have together, so it looks like we're 9 to 3. So, we chose Article 8, 24, and 26 to bring back to council.
What was the last one? 8:24 and
26. It sounds like you guys are gonna bring 9.
we will bring 9, and 25,
Okay,
and we will also bring 20. Okay. And that feels right. We might have more. I'll let Hannah know. If we have any more. I'll
Sounds
let
good.
you know by Thursday afternoon if we have any,
that sounds great.
potentially 11.
Yeah.
I won't commit to that.
Fair enough.
So do not come here next time. You will be at transportation.
What, you know the address of that?
Yeah, we can get that sent out.
Send it out.
Harold Reese.
Yeah.
I think I've been by there. I think I have. The
Harold,
address-
if we all
address
come
is
here?
7705.
If we all come here, will the school bus come get us?
Oh, we should have done that.
Oh, I like that idea.
Oh.
Yeah.
They will be on route.
Well, in line with that.
Well, we have a driver right here.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, please carpool because there's very carpeted parking.
We're all gonna practice our flexibility next week.
But there is carpool parking spots. So,
Fine, I still like my bus out here. Okay, anything else?
I think that's it. Thank you for the session.
Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Had a song ready for.
I know, I wanted to do this.
Next time if we have to make this. I'm ready.
We have, maybe we can do it more than once next.
Oh, thanks.
That would be really
Yeah,
nice.
I need a bell
Yeah.
Okay.
or a gavel.
Oh, I can. We have a dinner bell.
Trumpet.
All right, we'll go ahead and stop there.
Wave it.